Benitez here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Oh wait, hang on. This isn't YouTube. Hi all, I'm Elaiza Benitez and today I'm taking over the CRM audio podcast. I have two friends in our community, Matt Wittemann, who is based in the United States, and Anything But Code, Amey Holden, who is based in Australia. Today, we're going to have a chit chat about what their life has been like since leaving working for a Microsoft partner. In case you don't know what a Microsoft partner is, it's essentially a company that offers Microsoft-related services and products. An example can be cloud services, where they look after your infrastructure and operations, or they provide dedicated support. Okay, so back to the focus of this podcast episode. We're going to talk to Matt and Amey, who previously worked for Microsoft partners, and the path that they're on now. So I'm going to hand it over first to Amey to introduce herself, followed by Matt. Amey, over to you.
Awesome. Ladies first. Thank you. So my name is Amey Holden, Amey Anything But Code Holden. I've been doing the Dynamics Power Platform Juice for around 7 years now. Very much a typical Microsoft partner journey. I started with a partner and always have been until March this year, so 6 months ago. I do a lot of blogging. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm very passionate about running and Vegemite.
So I got to follow that up, huh?
Uh-huh.
My name is Matt Wittemann, and I have been up until 2 months ago in the partner space, the ecosystem for Microsoft Dynamics since the end of 2003, when Amey was just graduating from primary school. But in that time, I have worked for small partners, large partners, and ISVs, which are independent software vendors. And then 2 months ago, I joined the mothership, as they say, went to Microsoft.
Wow. So that means you had to relinquish your Microsoft MVP status.
After 16 years, I thought it was time to let Joel catch up.
And yeah, I appreciate that, Matt. What is your job at Microsoft?
So I am a senior technical specialist. The titles change depending on who you talk to and what month it is. But for a long time in the Microsoft world, it was called a TSP, and it's basically technical pre-sales. So I assist our sales folks who are selling business applications, Dynamics, and my specialty is Dynamics marketing and customer insights.
Good choice. I support that motion.
Yeah, I was going to say, does that mean you're going to recruit Amey next?
He can try.
Well, I want to head back to Amey because she said something really interesting that I can relate to, where she talked about how she's always worked for a Microsoft partner because that's the same boat that I've been in. So I've always worked for a Microsoft partner, and recently I left working for a Microsoft partner, and that's why we're having this chat, because I want to see what life has been like after working for a Microsoft partner. So in terms of Amey, I think I can relate to you because I'm going down a similar path where I myself is starting a new journey of being an independent, so a contractor, where I don't necessarily work for a Microsoft partner anymore, but I'm going to be actively out there and working on contracts essentially with different companies. So for you, Amey, at what point did you think or feel that you wanted to try something different from knowing what life is like with a Microsoft partner for a majority of your career?
Yeah, so good question. I've thought about it a lot. I remember even just being at IBM, my first Microsoft partner, maybe 1 or 2 years into my career. And I remember meeting a contractor And the first thing I found out was how much freaking money they got paid. I was like, this is so wrong. So that planted the seed. And then it was like, okay, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't have the confidence. I need more experience. Let's put it on the back burner. And then it got to the point in my life where I either became a grown-up and bought a house or moved to Australia. So I moved to Australia. But when you move to another country, you don't have permanent residency. So then I couldn't become a contractor then. So that put the dream on hold for a little bit longer because the terms of my visa was that I had to be employed. I went from a big Microsoft partner to a small one. Much more enjoyed the small one and started to get a feel of like, okay, doing my own thing, a bit more responsibility. And then I got acquired back to a larger partner. It wasn't very fun. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Plus I got permanent residency. So that was my ticket out of the circus. So I left the circus and joined my own circus.
So did you have your first couple contracts kind of figured out before you made the leap, or how did that happen?
Yeah. So I had a bit of a side hustle going on when I was still working with DXC. When I got my permanent residency, I just had it as a sole trader kind of thing. A couple of little contracts here and there, squeezing it in evenings and weekends. But then when I finally decided to take the leap, I actually reached out to our good friend Bruce Sitoli and said to him, help, I need to leave my company. I want to be a contractor, but it scares the bleep out of me. So I spoke to him. I trust Bruce. I said, if I'm going to work for anyone, it would be Bruce. And he took me on as a contractor 4 days a week initially. So then I had some kind of comfort blanket. And then I worked around that and started to grow my own customers on the side as well. And fun fact, my first customer that was my own official customer referred to from Nick Dolman.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So
and
again,
it's probably because they were scared of Nick because he can lift like 5,000 pounds, and if they don't listen to him, they're gonna. So, question I have for you, because I'm like the poster child for someone who's worked their whole career at a somebody said I'm like the furniture at Hitachi, right? Recruiters stop calling me because they know I'm not going anywhere. So, well, furniture is cool, nice chair, a table,
important.
Furniture's awesome. I mean, I love my desk. Anyway, the question I have is, I can imagine that going off on your own, I'm thinking for me, it'd be, well, what do I do when questions come out about stuff I don't know, right? It's like, I don't know everything. You're anything but code, but sometimes code is called for. So how do you have other independent contractors that you pair up with that you'll bring them in, or how do you take care of, because we have the luxury, in a large partner of having somebody there that is at least close to knowing something. Like if a question about field service comes up, I know I can call Mr. Tabor. So it's like, what's your lifeline?
Yeah. So I have a few. I'm very fortunate. So the first kind of backstop is that when a customer approaches me or I approach them, I try to understand where they want to go, what their journey is, and also be quite upfront and honest that I'm not going to write you a lump of code. Like, I work with the out-of-the-box stuff. I can use all the things, but I'm not going to write you lumps of code and complex stuff. So if it starts to look like it's going to be custom integrations, I'll refer the partner to someone else, the customer to someone else, because I'm not the right person for that job. And I'm fortunate that I don't need to take every customer that comes across my way. Like, I don't need to just do the work to survive. So that's number one, is that I try and avoid getting myself down rabbit holes where I don't want to be. But that's not always the case. We know things change, such as world, such as life. So my other backstops, again, because I've been doing this work with Bruce, I have him and his whole team, and Bruce has helped me out so much with my customer problems. So I've gone to him and just said, oh, can I pick your brains on this? Have you done this before? So even though it's not his customer, he's been super helpful with digging me out of some holes. And the third backstop was, I don't really, for my first year, I just want to focus on me and not having to employ someone else and look after someone else and feel like I'm going to let them down rather than just myself, because that's terrifying enough. So in the end, I actually got myself stuck in a situation with some SSRS reporting. I was complaining about it to our friend Megan Walker, and she went, "Do you want me to help?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes, please." So Megan was my first employee. So it's all network, I think, is a short answer. Network, even though I'm out on my own, it's the least alone I've ever felt.
Nice. Well, this is the Elaiza Benitez show, so I'm sorry. I'll let Elaiza ask questions.
No, it's okay.
I'll be
It's
quiet.
okay, Joel. Because there's actually a good time to switch over to Matt because Amy mentioned the topic of networking. So Matt, before you went Blue Badge, so in other words, joined the mothership, what was your path into, joining the mothership? Did you already know people there? Were they, did they reach out to you? What was that like?
Yeah. So yeah, over the years, I've gotten to know many people across Microsoft. Of course, just working in the partner channel and being an MVP,
And
and
writing the CRM 2011 Bible.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Writing books eons ago. But the funny thing is, actually, I was just telling this to my son, who's going to be finishing college next year, and he's applying to internships for next summer. And he was getting a little discouraged about, applying to a few of them. And I said, I think this was probably my sixth job process with Microsoft. And the first one was probably 12 years ago. And
Whoa.
every time it came down to there was one job that they wanted to hire me for. It was supposed to be where I didn't have to move. And then at the last minute, they decided they wanted it in Redmond, and that wouldn't work out for me at the time. And then there was another one where they flew me to Houston and along with another guy, and I guess they chose the other guy. And it just always came down to some, but interestingly with this one, I had been speaking since working with customer insights. I got to know some of the people who have various roles in Microsoft doing like product marketing and community work and things like that. And so every once in a while I'd be like, "Hey, you should look at this. Hey, you should look at that. There's a job open on my team, or there's a job open on this team." And there was one role I really wanted that was really interesting to me. What might have been a little bit of a stretch, but as it turned out, the guy that took that job, his role had to be backfilled. And so since people were reaching out to me, they're like, "Well, hey, now this is perfect for you." So finally worked out. But it was I'm sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but it was never like a straight line like you think, like, "Hey, I'm going to go work for Microsoft," and
Yeah.
So I have a question for you on that, Matt, is Microsoft is so big and there's so many different places you could go, like TSP, something with the product team. Nick Dolman is going to work in documentation. Hope that's not secret news anymore. Anyway, my question for you is, our friend Jim Novak, he went to work for the industry solutions team. So how did you have a strategy of, these are the parts of Microsoft I'm interested, these are the parts I'm not? Because it's kind of like such a big pond. How did you narrow down the areas, how did you decide?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a little bit of me wanting to, for one, I just want to work with Dynamics marketing and customer insights, and over the years when I spoke to Microsoft about different roles, it wasn't always that defined. Previously it was CRM was just one thing. But like you said, there's all sorts of different roles. But for me, it was like, will I be able to work with the technology that I love? And will I be able to continue kind of pushing my own boundaries about what I know? And will I be able to interact with people and share my enthusiasm for those technologies? And that's it. So this role is perfect for that. But also Microsoft is a great company in that they don't make you just like, hey, you're this role and that's what you're going to do now. There's, as we all know, working in this channel, somebody works at Microsoft and 18 months later, they're in some other job, they've moved on to something else. I don't plan to do that, but it's nice to know that, you can pursue your passion.
You had to wait a few years to make sure that Dynamics marketing would stick around and got roots, and then it's a good move.
Fair play.
Yeah.
I interviewed 5 times. Still didn't make it, but 5 times. And just fun fact, the week after you joined Microsoft, I had to do a sales insights call. So thanks for that. Appreciate that. But
I tried to do my best to hand things over when I left.
Did you dust off your deck from CRMUG Summit 2018?
That's right. What would you say, Matt, is the thing that you're noticing partners have in terms of information or knowledge or whatever that, oddly enough, you don't really have at Microsoft? Because you'd think you'd have everything, but I don't think you do.
Yeah. So Microsoft is one. I mean, even though I've been working in this space for almost 20 years and so closely with Microsoft, I continue to be impressed with just how smart everybody is and all the various teams, how hard they work, how many things that they are doing to advance the Dynamics and business applications and the Power Platform. How many things. It just blows me away when you see it from the inside, all the different things that are all moving pieces. But one thing that is difficult for Microsoft, I would think, and continues to be, is just being as close to the customer as partners are. Also, it's interesting how many people, I think surely the folks that are selling Dynamics probably have, as deep experience as I do. And it's interesting to see how many people just came from Oracle 18 months ago. But I think that speaks to the strength of the products, and there are transferable skills definitely in the technology world. But sorry, it's being close to the customer and having the scars from implementations.
The scars.
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember those. Well, I think I still have some.
Well, I think the observing again. I've worked for a partner, but our partner story has been, when I started at the company I work with now, before they were Hitachi, I was the 20th employee. So I got the small partner experience and now the big partner experience. And I think it's easy for someone more junior in their career to have like, oh, maybe I'm missing out. Maybe it'd be better to be over there. Maybe better to be at Microsoft. Maybe better to be independent. And I think the answer is just find where you flourish the most, because, working for a partner, there can be, a demand of working with multiple customers and, managing teams and that sort of thing. I guess, Amey, it seems like there's some independent consultants, like Bruce, you mentioned, the inertia can be, I'm getting more than I can take. I hire somebody. How do you guard against just turning into a partner? And is that a bad thing? That's because once you get a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, you basically have a job with a partner again. You're the partner, right?
Yeah. You become the beast that you tried to escape.
Right.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people I get that question a lot, like, are you going to hire people? Are you going to grow big? And I'm like, well, I don't have enough of a plan. Like, for now, I'm just like, it's going to be the Amey show. I'm going to do find out what I like doing in this space. If I grow, let's talk about it later. But for now, it's very much, I'm running the Amey show and doing what makes me happy that I lost when I worked for a bigger partner, which is working with customers and developing that close relationship and delivering things that they actually want rather than what they were sold by the salesman selling widgets. I'm genericizing heavily, but I have been burned by that too many times. And I thought, you know what, if I'm gonna get burnt that way, I'll do it myself and learn the hard way.
And I guess
And
the other side of that is if you stay independent and get a long contract with a customer, how how does that feel different? Maybe the amount of you get paid for it, but how does that feel different than being just a long-term staff augmentation or an admin for a single customer? Is that, how do you have the variety? Are most of your contracts longer, or do you have multiple shorter ones? What's your typical?
Yeah, so I've thought about that, because you get these kind of like, oh, it's contract position, 12 months full time, and I'm like, that's not contract to me. Like, what I see myself doing is a lot more smaller things. Like, I don't want to go work on big meaty projects right now. Like, I want to be doing like I've got someone who refers stuff to me. It's all the people that don't want to end up with a partner because it's too big for them. And I love doing that, like that small level stuff, and the amount of things that grow from that is unreal. Like, it starts the 5-day engagement, it turns into something else. And I much prefer that. That was the thing I liked of being with a small partner, is lots of different projects going on, bits and pieces, peaks and troughs. And that's what I really enjoy doing at the minute. So that's what I'm going to put myself towards. If I went on a 12-month contract full time, I don't think I'd get the same satisfaction. And you're right, I might as well just go and work for a Microsoft partner.
Short enough so that you don't get sick of each other, I call that.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, distance makes the heart grow fonder sometimes, yeah?
I think that's one of the things I always enjoyed working in the partner side was especially the first few weeks of a project, when you're solving all the really interesting challenges. And then after you solve all those really interesting challenges, and it's just a matter of like, okay, now let's just keep, building them out and blah, 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 blah. Okay, let somebody else do that. Like, that's
exactly.
That's the fun stuff. Like, if somebody comes to you and they're willing to pay you, a nice hourly rate for 5 days of your time because this has to get fixed, and you get to like go in there. It's like being special forces. You get to go in there, dazzle them with your brilliance. They love you, and then you move on. And if they continue to love you, maybe they have you back for some more interesting things.
Exactly that. Like, I feel like that's like I'm being a professional superhero. I like that.
So I have a question for the three of you, Amey, Elaiza, and Matt. How much has the last 18 months pandemic weirdness we've been in led to where you are now? Because I'll admit, I don't think I would be where I'm right now doing with the role I have right now had it not been for the COVID shutdown, because it totally changed the types of projects I was working on, the demand we were getting for the customer, increased Power Platform. So do you think, again, you can't say what it would be like if that hadn't happened, but do you think that if it hadn't been for what's happened over the last 2 years, would you now have made that shift?
E, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, I haven't really been impacted by COVID. What I mean by that is, even before COVID started, I was going through my own personal battle of not knowing what I wanted to do next in my career. Even when I left Australia and I was traveling the world, that whole time I was thinking, well, what am I gonna do next? And when I came back to New Zealand, I joined a Microsoft partner, and that's only because one of my former colleagues in the first Microsoft partner organization that I worked for always said, when you come back to New Zealand, reach out to me and we'll hire you, because it would be great to have you on the team. And so that's what I did, because that's all I've ever known, without thinking, what is it that I actually want to do next? And while I did enjoy my time there and worked on really cool projects, worked on amazing projects there, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and I wasn't feeling necessarily fulfilled. And even though I was, training and educating my former colleagues on all things, Power Automate and Canvas apps and portals, I still felt myself that I wasn't developing and I wasn't learning, if that makes sense. And I know that you can't always rely on someone else in your team to be able to learn new things, but I think that's a mistake that I made personally, even before COVID hit, was I didn't know what I actually want. And so what I'm doing now is taking the time and talking to lots of different people, whether it's in the MVP space, the Microsoft space, or people I haven't talked to in years that just suddenly reached out to me on LinkedIn because, I announced that I'm leaving, working for this Microsoft partner and I'm going to go contracting. So it's been good, but that's my take on it. It's not so much that COVID has impacted me. It's always been about me not knowing what I want to do next. And the catalyst for me was, I remember when I was in a Teams meeting, and it was a Teams meeting with a client that my former employer was supporting and another Microsoft partner that was building an IP solution. And when the solution architect and the lead consultant started giving a high level overview of the solution, I started to freak out because that's when I felt stale. And that scared me, in terms of just staying working for a Microsoft partner, but not really developing. And I know, Matt, we had a separate side conversation about this, that whole feeling of stale and not knowing what to do with it. And you have two decisions to make. You either stay and clock the hours and, do whatever it is that you need to do to get through the week, or you make the decision and leave, even though you don't know what's going to happen next. And I chose number two, basically.
Yeah. Well, the side conversation we had, I was telling Elaiza that I admire her courage to do that, because after 20 years in the space, I was always thinking about, I should go out on my own. I had so many friends who did that. All, in our MVP community, how many of them are independent? And, I always had 16 excuses why I couldn't go out on my own. Probably a lot of good reasons too, kids and all that kind of stuff. But but it takes a lot of courage to take that step. So I admire you for doing that. And then taking the time to figure out exactly what it is that you want to do. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And Amy was part of the inspiration, because I remember when she did it and I was like, oh my gosh, someone else is doing it. Because
Let's go first and see if it works.
Let's jump. You first.
I'm the chess monkey.
The first one was Megan Walker, actually, because her and I have also had side chats. And I remember when she made the leap, and then seeing her thrive, and then Amy next. And I was thinking, well, if they can do it, so can I. And I remember thinking, am I really going to do this? And I remember when I, resigned, handed my notice in, had a chat with my former manager, and I was thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? But then a little voice in me said, you're going to be fine. It's okay. There's nothing to worry about. And then sure enough, when I started telling people in my network. So again, going back to what Amy was talking about, networking is so important. That's when I started to feel better, because then a lot of people said, when you're ready, let us know, because we'd love to have you help us out. So I do have quite a few options going on at the moment. So it's just a matter of deciding which one I want to do. But then it goes back to one of the questions I wanted to ask Amy is, how difficult is it for you to say no at times? And when do you know to say no, especially when, like what Joel said, if it's something that a company or a friend wants you to help out in, but you know that you're not competent in it, or you have little knowledge in it, and it makes you feel uncomfortable to accept it. Yeah, what do you do in that scenario?
Yeah, I'll let you know when I work it out. No, I'm pretty good at saying no to stuff that I know, like I just get a gut feeling. I'm like, this isn't right for me. Like, I don't know. I just get this feeling. I don't know what it is, because I know what I enjoy doing. And again, like I said, I'm lucky that I don't need to take everything that comes along my way.
Yeah.
So I think that really helps. So I have a gut feeling, and I'm like, that's not right. It's a feeling I used to get when I was at a partner and they said, this is your project, go. And I had no choice. And now I've got that power and that choice, and I'm like, no, this is not right for me. But then there's the other side of when I really like a customer, and then you're like, okay, yep, it'll just be 1 day a week. And then all of a sudden you have an overwhelming heap of work, and deadlines, and you're the person that's got to fix it. And I do sometimes dig myself into those holes. I'm slowly learning. Thankfully, because we're mostly not allowed to leave our houses, I have nothing better to do. But I do need to make a review of that once my life goes back to normal.
Was
So yeah.
it challenging, for the just logistics of contract negotiations and all that, in billing people and that kind of thing? How difficult was that to get systematized for you?
I had the best fun. I built my own Power App to do it all.
Wow.
It was so nice. I built myself something. So I built myself a whole model-driven Power App where I track all my time and it generates all my invoices. And it's all the stuff I love doing. So I had the best time.
And we know Elaiza's
bit.
got this awesome flow that just automatically tracks what she's doing from her calendar, sends people invoices and follow-up emails if they don't pay, and all that stuff. I bet it's just awesome.
Exactly.
Well,
it's
actually been a good learning curve because before Megan actually has talked about this, I think with Nick Dolman as well, because Nick Dolman has a YouTube channel for, I think it's called Entrepreneurship or something like that. And I remember listening to the episode and Megan was talking about how she set herself up before she went contracting. So I followed some of her advice and did some of it beforehand, but the amount of things that you need to set up is insane. I didn't know, and now I'm learning so much from it all. But what I want to do though is I want to flip the question because it's interesting when Amey said sometimes when you're working for a Microsoft partner, you get put in a project that you don't necessarily want to do. So Joel and Sean, my question for you both is, what do you do when you come across someone in your team that confides in you and says, look, Joel or Sean, I'm feeling stressed because I'm way out of my depth here in this project that I've been tasked to do. I'm on it because I'm the only resource that has the capacity at the moment. No one else can take it on. And so I have to do it, but I know nothing. And I'm so stressed. Like, what do you guys do?
You want me to go?
Go ahead.
Joel's like,
I'll go.
yeah.
Okay, so this actually has happened to me.
Yeah.
Not terribly recently, but it has happened. And what there's a couple of different situations when this happens. It's one situation is there's a lack of confidence, but the knowledge is there. And then there is, I have no freaking clue what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. For the first one, it's really helping them take an inventory of where they're actually at, what the project's actually needing, and giving that kind of gentle guidance to help them along the path and make them feel a little bit more confident in their abilities, right? In the latter situation, where they truly are out of their depth and they don't know, the first thing I do if that happens and they come to me is I applaud them for telling me. I would rather them tell me now than 6 months later when I'm getting a call from the project manager saying we have to, non-bill all of this work that was done because it was garbage, right? And then when that happens, yeah, I always try to help them either move to another project or get them an additional resource, or even I jump in myself to give them that guidance to make them feel more comfortable, because it is a learning opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I am proud that we do try to never put someone on a project that has no clue what they should be doing. Like, for example, we're getting a lot of project ops business now, and we do have people that have implemented PSA, and only a couple that have done, some recent project ops work, right? So that's a unique skill set, and we really try to either push a start date to where we can get a resource that has, not only the skill set but the availability, or get a timeline to where we can train someone up. So I really try to never make that a negative situation. always try to reinforce the positivity that they had the courage to raise the flag and say, I'm out of my depths. Because I remember when I was there. When I first became an architect, I became an architect because my boss at the time said, if you want this raise, the only way I can give it to you is if you're an architect. And I said, well, I'm not an architect. He goes, do you want this money? I said, yeah. Okay, Mr. Architect, go figure out how to be an architect. So, you got to kind of, you got to do that. So,
I gotta say
yeah,
that
it's
one thing Hitachi does well, though, is recruit and cultivate people who are like very willing to learn and throw themselves into, I mean, there's the technology we work with is so vast that none of us, no matter how long we've been doing it, go into every project feeling 100% confident, like, oh, I got this, So you have to have that attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's the way you learn as a consultant, right? Like, I think that's about how most projects are for me. Like, I usually have an idea on some stuff, but I'm always learning new stuff. And I like that idea of turn that fear into an opportunity to learn. And that's what a partner can provide, is providing that safe space for you to try, experiment, learn, maybe fudge up, but someone's got your back. And 90% of the time, you don't make a mess of it at all. You just need someone there saying, I know you can do this, go and do it.
Yep. I remember the first project I was on. I was a former inside salesperson, and the first project I was on site installing the CRM 3.0 email router. And it was like, I had never been on a server in my life. And then I was on a project where we needed SSRS reports. And I literally went to Barnes & Noble and bought the guide to SSRS reports and stayed up all night and got something to kind of work. And I remember I was so excited when I got pre-filtering to work. It was awesome. But I've come to appreciate that most people don't have that kind of risk tolerance. And it is very stressful. But also now I have a team full of people. The average person does not have Dynamics experience. A lot of them are SharePoint background and coming in for Power Platform. Very good Canvas app makers or flow people, but they've had to learn Dataverse. They've had to learn solutions. Some of them have learned ALM very well, and some of the more advanced topics that even some Dynamics people struggle with. And so what I've learned is, though, kind of how to gauge their comfort level. And I like to pair more junior people with more senior people. So I don't want to put somebody who's junior out by themselves, because they'll flounder. But what works well is pairing them up with a senior who has more experience, who and confidence. So it's experience and confidence, because some people are like 40% confident, 40% knowledge, go in and overconfident. Other people are 80% competent but think they're 30%. And for that, it's a bad recipe if we're expecting. But then what I'll do is, hey, you come to something that you don't know, I'll plug somebody else from the team in. Like, hey, we need to have source code set up and repos and stuff. And the person on there, the developer, doesn't have experience with that. I'll grab Matt Devaney or somebody that has, is really smart about that, and stick them in strategically. Even if that means that gives up a few hours for this person, it's a better end result, and people don't feel like they're floundering. So I want people to be stretched a little bit, but not so much that it's stressful for them, and not so much that they're afraid to raise their hand and say, you know what, we got into this and we didn't realize this would need responsive Canvas apps and load save data for offline and all that stuff. So then it's okay. We'll have somebody else plug in there and again, sometimes switch somebody to another project, or keep them on the project, but have somebody come in and plug where their gap is. But what I ask them is, I want you to become more comfortable with this. It's okay to say, I can't do this, but if it's the third, fourth, fifth time, and it's a bread and butter type thing we do, I want to see you make an effort. I want to see you working outside the project to learn this, to get comfortable with it. Maybe you're not the world's most foremost expert on that, but you're comfortable with it, and at least know when that's coming and what to look for and how to advise people.
And that's how you build a dream team.
Well,
Matt,
Hitachi
controversial
MVP Army,
question.
right?
I have a
Uh,
controversial question for Matt.
I'll bring it
Is
on.
is Microsoft where MVPs go to die?
Oh.
Bazinga.
Yeah.
No, actually, we have a super secret club here for these. I'm breaking the
Like Club 33 at Disney. You have to have a special shade of blue badge, and you badge in, and
right.
yeah.
Secret handshakes and decoder rings and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So
Now I'm curious.
no, it's an interesting question though, because for almost 2 decades, much of what drove me in my career was the energy I got from the community, from going and speaking at things and meeting people and doing that sort of thing. And so that definitely is a question for me, is like, well, am I going to have that same ability to get that kind of like, man, I want in-person events again where, I can go be on a panel with some other really smart people and that make me look good, but just, meeting, interacting with people and that kind of thing. Definitely, I think a lot of MVPs are like that. They love the community and they love the energy they get from it. And you know what? Frankly, ask me again in a year if
Yeah.
Well, we've seen in the last year or so, we've seen several independent consultants go work at Microsoft. We've seen people who were MVPs that went to Microsoft leave Microsoft and go work for partners. So it's not there's not a destination. It's like, yeah, it's okay to move around in your career, says the guy who's worked at the same company for 15 years.
And my daughter, who's a teacher, asked me today a serious question: what would it take to do what you do?
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
lots and lots of Funko Pops.
And Baby Yoda.
Yes, but yeah, so I mean, it's we're very lucky that our industry is so diverse and so accessible that I don't want to say anybody can do it, because not anybody can do it, but I think a lot more people have the ability to do it, given the multiple channels, whether it is straight Microsoft. A lot of people from, a lot of really sharp people from college go right to Microsoft through intern programs and such. There's we have our own intern program where we work, and so do a lot of other partners. There's just a lot of opportunity, and especially given everything that's going on with working remotely, now that it's becoming much more accepted than it used to be globally. I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of potentially talented people that hopefully, can take advantage of it.
So Amey and Elaiza, I asked about the pandemic earlier. Let me ask that a different way. With the increased acceptance for remote work, are you geographically constrained in the customers you work with, or are you working with people in a bunch of different geographic regions?
The latter.
I'm not constrained by the geographics, but I am constrained by the fact that I like sleeping during the nighttime hours. That is now the only limitation. I like sleeping, and I like sleeping when it's dark, and I like to wake up when the sun rises. So that's the main limitation now. So yeah, no geographical limitations. I can work anywhere in the world. I think COVID gave me the confidence, because I think the demand for Power Platform went through the roof. Like I've always said, I have a very COVID friendly job, and that gave me the extra confidence. Plus, it was March when COVID hit that I became an MVP. So a combination of things just eventually gave me all that confidence I needed to be like, stuff it. I don't have kids. I don't have a house. I don't have any excuses anymore. Go for it. What have you got to lose?
Well, you really should consider doing work for U.S. companies, because here, anybody with a British accent is viewed as 5 times as intelligent. So it's
amazing.
You would kill it.
And in Florida, you're viewed as 5 times less.
Yeah, I agree with Avi because again, it came back to networking and then talking to people that I haven't talked to in years, and someone who I actually spoke to recently because he reached out. So the scenario with this particular friend is that we used to work together in the first Microsoft partner that I worked for, and he came from the UK and then he moved back to the UK. And when he moved back to the UK, he left the CRM developer world. And since then, he's worked for a couple of companies, and the company that he's joined now in his hometown is now interested in Paris and in particular portals. So then he messaged me on LinkedIn and we recently had a chat. And it's funny because you you somehow think once you're done working with someone that's it, you're never going to see them again. But based on what you're passionate about and where your skill sets are, you're still somehow going to be connected to people that see you as an expert in that domain. And from that conversation, when I shared with him that I'm going to be going independent soon, he was like, "Oh, perfect!" Because then if you want to, you can help us out and help educate our team. And so for me, I don't think there's a boundary based on where you're located in the world these days. And I know that there's another MVP in our family, Guido, who's also embarking on the same journey himself. And we're not necessarily tied to the country that we reside in anymore. And I think it's just a matter of, well, knowing where your strengths are in terms of the Power Platform or in Dynamics, and letting people know what you're doing so that they can reach out to you and you can work with them possibly in that regard. But totally what Amy said, it's a time zone thing as well. I mean, you don't really want to be working up into the early hours in your time zone just because the person who you wanting to work with is in a completely different hour business working hours or whatnot. But yeah.
It's also demand. Like the demand in Australia, from my experience, I'm not sure as much about New Zealand, but it's huge. Like I don't need to go to another country. Like the demand here is massive. Like if I needed to, I could, but at the minute, you really don't need to. Jeez.
Yeah. So,
Well,
Amy, in terms of where you're at now, and if you think back to that person you were when you were working for the bigger Microsoft partner that you mentioned when you came to Australia, what would you tell yourself then in terms of, don't be afraid or just do it. Just don't think about it and do it.
Yeah, I think that's eventually what I did. Like I think it all just fell into place and I just kind of went along for the ride. But what would I say? I think maybe more to embrace the time that I had at the partner because it's all working towards what I will be doing in 6 months' time. Because I couldn't do this just going in fresh. So be grateful of what I'm learning, take every learning opportunity I can with the partners. It's good for you, and future Amy will be grateful.
Wonderful. And
Cheers.
Matt, do you Matt, do you miss working for a partner? You can let the dirt out. Yeah. Don't worry about Joel and Sean. They don't exist. Sorry, guys. Matt,
So
it's just you and I right now.
It's only been a couple of months, so not long enough to start missing it yet. Still really new and just absorbing everything at Microsoft. But no, there are things I'll miss for sure. I'm in a role. It's interesting at Microsoft is it's actually like classified as part of your role to be an individual contributor. And it doesn't mean I don't work with other people to accomplish things. I have a bunch of folks that I rely on to do my everyday job. But, there is definitely the team aspect where you get to know your project team and you're working together on something like that. I mean, there's parts of that world that, the whole conversation about drawing on other people for your, where you're weak in something and being paired with them, you still have to do that regardless of your role. As an individual contributor, as a contractor or an independent, you still have to rely on other people to help you out in those areas. But yeah, I think, building a team, that aspect of the partner world, that's something I'll probably find myself missing.
So let's check back in a year when Matt's departed and he's now working for like Marketo. I'm actually a developer working for resources in South America, and I'm fully nocturnal and I actually don't have a job. Like, let's look at in a year.
Yeah, so Matt, is it weird to go kind of from a role where you are like seeing something like a project through to the end to more of the technical pre-sales role where you're starting things, right? Is that a factor? I mean, and also you're still doing like involved with pre-sales and like technical aspects of that, but how do you guard against losing your technical edge, compared to the deeper involvement you had actually developing something? Are there things you're doing to stay sharp while you're not, you're not going as deep into deployments as you were?
Yeah, I mean, I've done both over my career, and every time I get too long, like when I was at Click Dimensions for 8 years, I worked with literally thousands of customers and hundreds of partners. And so I never saw anything from beginning to end. It was always like I'm brought in, it was pre-sales, it was technical, support, it was, fixing, sticky problems, whatever, but I never got the full project scope. So after 8 years, I was missing that. And it was nice to go to Hitachi where like, okay, now I can do those projects like I had done in years past. I love both of those things. It's hard. I don't know. It's hard to not be on that. But at Microsoft, I think the one thing what keeps me on my toes is the customers, because when I get invited to a call with a customer, all of a sudden I'm like, they're hearing Matt with Microsoft. All of a sudden, like what I'm saying, like I join a call and all of a sudden I have to be authoritative, and I kind of always have pretended to be authoritative, but now it's like, oh wait, I got this big brand name attached to my name that, so boy, I better be sharp on that call, or know when to keep my mouth shut. That's
right. Yeah, I think that's where we talked about, kind of the different paths people take, and in this type of career, it's like work for a partner, but even whether you work for a partner or go independent and start your own thing and hire people, kind of the inertia that some people follow is you reach a point where you basically become management, right? And you stop doing stuff, and that's when it just becomes all meetings. And that's one thing I fought against, just for myself. When I'm doing that too much, I actually miss building something and actually getting my hands dirty.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think, the common thing of the people on this call are, you're fighting that inertia and still staying in the mix, where I think, for those of us that are getting older, not everybody in this call is getting older, but some of us are. And I think you reach a point where it just, after a while, it's like, do I want to keep, keeping up with this fast changing technology and this fast moving train, or do I just want to find a place where I can catch my breath for 10 years before I retire or whatever?
Well, that's one thing I told our good friend Sarah Critchley, who had become my boss at Hitachi before I left, was I did learn over the years I don't like managing people. So, like that's one thing that it just gets. I mean, managing a team, running a team where the team members are looking to me for guidance, that's great. But like people, like they're letting me know when they're calling in sick. I don't want that. I don't care.
Yeah, having to let people go that's the worst part of the job.
Yeah.
Amey, so that's something to consider if you ever decide to start taking on employees. Is
I know.
How much
the
do you really like
baggage?
Yeah.
I don't even like people.
Right?
Well, then the firing part should be fine.
Yeah.
That's where you're gonna yeah.
Amey,
Okay, I'm done. We're done.
Get started today. I'm going to be a couple hours late because my kid got sick, and then my cat threw up, and you can be like, you know what, just don't bother.
Cry me a river.
So Sean, in the years we've worked together and known each other, how many projects have we worked on together?
What?
How in the years that we've known each other and worked together, how many projects have you and I been on together? 2?
What are you asking?
I'm just saying, most people, like MVPs, if they work together that closely, don't like each other. That's why I'm still friends with Scott Sewell, because while I worked with him, I didn't work on the same project with him. And there's other former MVPs who used to work with us that I got along fine with till I was on a long project with them, and we butted heads. And so I guess where I'm going with that is
I needed a policy to not be on a project with you because I did not want to not like you.
Yeah,
exactly.
That could just be you. That could just be you, Joel. I don't know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But it's true. It's true because it's. Oh, and I was on a terrible project with Scott Sewell, and I love him to this day. But at the time, so to me, if I'm friends with someone in the MVP community that works with us, it's tough to get on a project with them because you have to be able to give constructive criticism. They have to be able to take it. You have to be able to take it. Do you know what I mean? And there's a built-in ego that we get when we get that little badge, and it is what it is, So.
Right. But I think it's different. And again, I'm speculating because I haven't been independent. But if you're independent and have a niche, and you're not a developer, and then you pull in Guido and he's a developer, that's a complementary setup. Yeah. Like, you're not going to start getting into the plugins and PCF controls, and he's probably not going to get into Dynamics marketing. Maybe you will, I don't know. But that's where I think that's where it can work out. And I think when you're independent and have a network of people that you can trust. And again, just because someone's an MVP doesn't mean they're necessarily good at what they do too. Because we've seen places where we subcontracted an MVP and their firm has not delivered or something like that. And that's always hard because you like those people as a friend, but maybe culture didn't mesh or that kind of thing. So yeah, that's where, again, I think takeaway I'm taking from this is there's a lot of different paths you can take, and knowing what you're good at. And Amey, to your point, if you didn't have that experience with the partner, you wouldn't know what you liked, what you were good at, what you didn't like. And so every manager you've ever had, every customer you worked with is information that you process that leads you to, be more self-aware and to know this is where I flourish, this is where I don't.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I wouldn't be here without it. You can't just go into this job from graduate school or whatever, or doing some exams. It's not stuff you can learn.
Right. And I will say my lesson from being at a partner 15 years is partner landscape has changed significantly even the last 5 years with acquisitions and smaller partners getting gobbled up. And we were fortunate in that when our customer effective became Hitachi, it was a very complementary marriage. It wasn't being acquired and taken over and everything changes. And what I would say, if you are a partner, it is possible to train them. It is possible to affect change within the organization to get to help build the organization that you want, even at a bigger partner. So again, don't lose heart and say, I don't like my boss, I don't like my team members, I'm on a project that stinks. Those are not necessarily reasons to jump ship. If you'll be good at what you're doing and you'll be more fulfilled doing that, then go ahead, do it. But we've all seen people, leave and go somewhere for either a small pay increase or a bump up in title before they were ready for it, and they burn out. So again, just that's where I think you all are inspiring me, to say that, again, whatever you do, go all in for it, learn what you're good at, and then flourish where you are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you both, Matt and Amey, for joining us today, and for Sean for and Joel for tagging along.
Sorry for talking too much.
Nah, it's all good. No, it's been really good talking to you both, and yeah, Amy, you're totally someone I look up to in this space. So
Aw.
thanks for having the chit chat with us today.
And Elaiza,
Sorry, Matt,
you
you're
did
not
an awesome
inspirational. We like
you did an
that.
awesome job at your first
Hey,
podcast here,
hey,
Elaiza.
Matt crushes souls. That's all he does.
I got to
Crushes
give props
dreams.
to Amy. No, I've bookmarked a couple of her blog articles in the last 2 months since I've been at Microsoft. I'm like, oh, I got to remember to come back to those on my.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, you know how to get in
Thank
touch
you.
with Amy, so
I don't know what you're trying to say exactly.
I'm not sure either, but it
Yeah.
can be interpreted
We
in so many
we
ways.
should come back. We should come back in a year. Yeah, we should come back in a year though. I want to see
Yeah.
what has happened with Elaiza. Like, you know,
Alright.
Yes.
it'd be like
What do you
last
want?
time, CRM audio. We heard Elaiza was stepping out into the unknown. Meanwhile, Amy is taking on 6 new employees.
And
And
Joel
Matt
started
is
up his
at
own
Marketo.
partner. He's
Yeah.
left the furniture. And
Yeah.
Joel's got a million bobbleheads, whatever they are.
Right.
He can't fit in his room because he's got so many.
and Matt has joined Marketo, or even
Yeah. Mhm.
No, why? Why would you say that?
Well, Elaiza, you've done an
Oh,
awesome
fine.
job on hosting your own podcast here. Anytime you want to, you're welcome to take over the show.
Okay, cool.
Do you have a snappy ending for this? I usually say join us next time.
No, but I will say a shout out to my former colleague who actually does listen to CRM Audio. His name is Richard Watt. So, hey, Richard. And Richard said his favorite host from the CRM Audio podcast is George. And I asked him why, and he said George is the most cynical and he makes it more fun.
He makes it more fun for who?
I guess for the listeners, but yeah.
Oh.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
See you next year.